is a little bit more involved. There's quite a few ingredients in this, but I'll just explain each one as I'm going through. I'm also going to add in some essential oils to this one, which are specific for healing the skin and helping with cell regeneration, because we're making it for stretch marks. So those of you out there that have got stretch marks know that it takes a little bit to shift them. Okay. We're also including a little bit of honey, which is very nourishing and moisturising to the skin. Okay, so what I've done is I've made up a decoction one that I made earlier, with specific herbs in it. This has got some calendula, some comfrey and some lavender in it. Okay, so those are really good for healing the skin and helping with regenerating cells. I'm also going to be adding some vegetable glycerine in, and that's just my choice, my preference because of being vegetarian, but you can just use normal glycerine if you want. I've got a tincture which is made with methanol, specifically for using externally, which is made from lavenders, and I've also got a witch hazel extract which is made with lemon balm, which is very soothing, plus, as I said, the honey and some cold pressed almond oil. Okay, so all of those things are going to be added into the blender. Now the blender, you can get, these are really cheap or inexpensive. You can get them from good Sammy secondhand shops, 20 bucks, 30 bucks. I only use this for making these types of preparations in. I'm also going to be using some emulsifying wax, which is made from coconut oil, but we're going to have to segue over to the stove for that. I'm going to melt that and then add it into the blender here, and you'll see as we're going through, it'll all blend up into a nice thick lotion, which will be used by certain people. Okay, so I'm just going to bear with me and I'm going to start adding things in.
So while you're adding Dipaunka, how long would someone have to use the ointment, and what kind of result would they expect?
It will depend on the severity of the stretch marks, and it will also depend on
how recent they are?
How recent they are, yeah. Obviously, the longer they've been there, the longer it's going to take to
okay, but
shift them.
Even if they have been there for a long time, will this still be beneficial?
It will be, but I wouldn't make any rash promises about how good it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's different, everyone's skin tone is different, yeah. And so it's going to just depend entirely on the person. But they will notice a difference. With the glycerine, as you can see as I'm pouring it, it's quite viscous, okay, so it's quite thick, so it takes a little bit to get it all out. But what I do is when I put the honey in here, I use the same container that I've put the glycerine in, because it helps the honey to slip out a lot easier. So it's going to take a little while. So you can see the honey with the glycerine slips out quite easily there. I'm putting in the decoction that I made from the calendula, the lavender and the comfrey. Now I'm putting in some witch hazel extract or lemon balm. The witch hazel is readily available from health food shops. The oil, the almond oil is readily available from health food stores. The honey, obviously, you can get from anywhere, and the tincture it's one I've made myself. Same with the witch hazel extract, I made that myself. But
we'll be providing information for the viewers on how they can actually contact Dipaunka after hours. Dipaunka actually runs his own herbalist clinic, so if you would like more information on any of the mixtures or the tinctures or the ingredients that he's used today, you will be able to ring him direct, and he will be quite happy to tell you and talk to you about that.
So what I'm adding in here now is a tincture which is made from lavender, but it's made with methanol, so it's purely for external use only. Wouldn't ingest this, otherwise you'd end up being very, very sick.
Dipaunka, I understand that the misuse of herbs can be just as dangerous as the misuse of medications.
Yeah, well that's right. You've really got to know your herbs and what you're putting into your preparations, especially ones that you ingest. The ones that are topical, not so bad because there's less risk of any problems, but anything that you ingest orally, you really need to know what you're doing. You really need to know all the things that the herbs do, and if there are any contraindications with any medication that someone's taking, because if there are complications and problems, then you could be in a whole lot of trouble.
Okay.
What I've done is I've added a little bit of almond oil into the blender, but the rest of the almond oil that's in the mixture I'm actually going to add into the pot on the stove with the emulsifying wax, which, as I said earlier, is made from coconut oil. I'm also adding in a little bit of benzoic acid, which is a natural preservative. Okay, because if we don't, the lotion will, because it's got water extracts in it, will actually go off. Okay, so we need it to preserve it. This will keep it for at least 12 months to 2 years. Hopefully you would have used it all before then and seen the results, and everyone's happy. So with the benzoic acid, it comes from the benzoin tree. It's very potent, and you only need to use a very small amount. The ratio is 1 part per 1,000. So for every litre of liquid you use using 1 gram. So this is about, this is a 500 ml mix, so I'm only going to use about 0.5 of a gram, which is not measurable, but roughly a couple of little teaspoons worth, and that's enough. So this oil that I'm pouring out now is going to go into the pot with the emulsifying wax to help melt it down. Then when that's cooled, we'll be bringing it over and pouring it into the blender, blending it through, and as you'll see, it'll slowly emulsify and thicken up, and we'll have a nice lotion. What I've done is I've put the wax into the pot here. I'm going to add the almond oil and then melt it down until the wax is completely melted. There is a certain point, then once it's melted, I'll turn it off. We have to wait for a small amount of time for the wax and the oil to cool down enough to put it into the cold solution of the ingredients that are in the blender. Now, it's fairly critical, the point at where you pour it in, because it has to have just cooled down enough where it's starting to get a little milky and cloudy, and then that's when you can pour it in. If you pour it in too early, it won't emulsify. If you pour it in too late, you won't get the wax out of the pot because it'll thicken back up again. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm adding in essential oils. I'm putting in some Palmarosa, and I'm going to put some rosewood and some Peru balsam, all of which are good for regenerating skin and cells, and also very aromatic. Okay, the wax is at the right temperature now, so I can now put it into the blender. It's going to get very noisy in here for a moment, but what you'll see is the lotion starting to emulsify, it gets thicker, and at a certain point we'll be turning it off.